Okay, so get this right. I went down this rabbit hole the other day looking at early AI art.
Oh, yeah.
And let's just say some of it was something else. I swear, one image, I think it was supposed to be a cat, looked more like a melted ice cream cone or something.
I've seen those. It's wild how far things have come, even just in the last couple of years.
Right. Speaking of how far things have come, that's actually what we're diving into today, Imagen 3, the latest from Google's Gemini project.
It's been making waves, that's for sure.
Definitely. And our listeners have been super curious about it, so we're going to break it all down. Big picture AI image generation, Imagen 3, is a big step in that whole world. Google made a lot of noise about it initially, then they kind of pumped the brakes.
Yeah, they hit pause for a bit there.
Exactly. Wanted to make sure they got it right, but now it's back, and they're calling it a major upgrade. So, gotta ask, from an expert's perspective, is it the real deal?
It's a pretty significant leap, yeah. We're not just talking about filters or enhancements here. Imagen 3 takes your words and actually tries to build an image from scratch. Like, you could say, paint me a picture of a dragon flying over a volcano, and that's what it'll try to do.
From what I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen even more, the detail in these images is kind of insane. Like, we're talking scales, fire, the whole 9 yards. But backing up a bit, for those of us who aren't, coding whizzes, how does it even work? What's going on under the hood?
So without getting too technical, it all starts with what's called a diffusion model. Basically, imagine you take a perfectly clear image and then you just start adding noise to it, like pixel by pixel, until it's just a blurry mess. A diffusion model works in reverse. It learns how to take that blurry mess and slowly remove the noise to reveal an image.
Okay, I think I'm following so far.
Yeah.
But how does it know which noise to remove to make? Like a dragon versus, I don't know, a bowl of fruit.
That's where the learning part gets really wild. Imagen 3 has been trained on this massive data set. We're talking billions of images and text descriptions. So when you give it a prompt, it's not just looking for keywords, it's drawing on this deep well of visual information to make connections between words, styles, even emotions.
So the more it learns, the smarter it gets about connecting those words and images.
Exactly. And that's how it can generate those crazy detailed and sometimes pretty out there images. It's almost like it's learning a new language, but instead of words, it's using visuals.
That's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Hmm.
But speaking of learning and maybe some growing pains, I do want to touch on some of those early hiccups Google had with Gemini. Because it wasn't all smooth sailing at first, right?
Right. It's all part of the process, I guess.
For sure. And that actually leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive, where we're going to unpack those early challenges and what Google learned from them. So like those early Gemini issues, they weren't just, funny little glitches where it felt like there was something kind of bigger there.
Yeah, it definitely brought up some bigger questions about AI and like how it learns. Remember those historical figures showing up in some pretty wild outfits.
It was like AI decided to play dress up with history.
Exactly. And that all comes back to the data that these AI models are trained on. Think of it this way. If you only ever show someone pictures of, say, a desert, they might not know what a tree is, right? Or they might have a really weird idea of what a tree looks like based on the limited information they have.
Okay, so data is like the food that AI eats. But Google hit pause on Gemini for a while, right?
Hmm.
Were those data gaps part of the reason why?
Totally. And to their credit, they didn't just try to, like, slap a Band-Aid on it. They brought in whole teams to really put Gemini through the ringer, find its weaknesses, figure out where it could go wrong.
It's like AI boot camp, but instead of making it stronger.
You're making it smarter, more resilient. They wanted to find the vulnerabilities before they became real-world problems.
Which makes sense, because with something this powerful, even a small mistake can have big consequences.
Absolutely. And that leads into something you were curious about, Imagen 3's ability to depict people.
Yeah, that feels like a whole other level.
It is. It's something Google's very aware of. They've put some pretty strict guardrails in place. Like, you can't use Imagen 3 to create images of, say, specific individuals that look photorealistic.
No fake celebrity portraits then.
Nope, not going to happen. It's about protecting people's images and, honestly, preventing some potentially messy situations. But that doesn't mean you can't get creative with it. We were talking about how you're into design, right? Imagine being able to describe a scene for, I don't know, a website banner, and Imagen 3 just creates it for you.
See, now you're speaking my language. But can it go beyond, like, product design?
Yeah.
Can it handle those big, out there, imaginative concepts?
100%. And that's where things get really interesting. One example that comes to mind, Someone gave Imogen 3 the prompt: a dragon hatching from its egg in a meadow, sunlight streaming through the trees, wildflowers everywhere.
Pretty specific, right?
Yeah, that's not exactly your average stock photo request.
And Imogen 3 just nailed it. The details were incredible. It wasn't just, oh, there's a dragon. It captured the mood, the atmosphere, the way the light hit the dragon's scales.
Okay, now I really want to try this thing. It sounds like Imogen 3 has the potential to be a game changer, not just for designers, but for artists, writers, anyone who works with visuals.
No doubt. And that's really just the beginning. Think about education, for example. Okay, before we jump into that, I do want to address the elephant in the room when we talk about AI and creativity. Are we all about to be out of a job? It's the question, isn't it? Are we building our replacements, or is this something totally different?
It's a good question. I think, instead of thinking robots versus humans, what if it's more like a partnership?
Okay, I like that.
Think about like a musician, right? They've got instruments, software, all this stuff that helps them create. AI tools like Imogen 3 could be like that, another tool in the toolbox, but not a replacement for the musician.
So not replacing the creativity, just giving people new ways to express it.
Yeah. And we were talking about education earlier. Imagine a teacher who's like, okay, kids, we're learning about the solar system today, but instead of just looking at a flat image in a book, I want you to actually see it, experience it in 3D. Boom, Imogen 3 can make that happen.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And you're saying something about research too, right? Like how Imogen 3 could change things there.
Totally. Remember that research paper you mentioned? The one with like all the data that was kind of hard to wrap your head around? Well, imagine if you could feed that data into Imogen 3
Yeah.
and have it create a visual representation of the key findings. Suddenly, it's not just numbers on a page, it's a story that anyone can understand.
That's wild. It's like giving people a new way to see the world.
Right.
But, I mean, it feels like there's always a but, right? Like the great power comes.
Yeah. Responsibility, yeah, for sure. We got to acknowledge that this technology, it's still new. There are going to be challenges, things we haven't even thought of yet.
So where do we draw the line?
Mhm.
What are some of the things we need to be cautious about?
Well, misuse is a big one. Like any tool, you can use it for good or not so good.
Right. So it's not enough to just like create all these rules and hope for the best.
Rules are important, don't get me wrong, but it also comes down to like a sense of responsibility for the people creating these tools. Yeah, but also for the people using them.
It's like we're all in this together, figuring it out as we go.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening who's been on this deep dive with us today, what's the one thing you want them to take away from all this?
I think the biggest thing is AI image generation. It's a tool, a powerful tool, and it has the potential to be incredibly beneficial in so many different ways. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to use it responsibly and to make sure that it's used for good.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap things up. To all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Imogen 3 and the world of AI image generation. Until next time, keep those imaginations firing. And remember, the future is waiting to be created.